I mean, this is such an important story. I mean, demand is going to drive this market, and the reopening of China is the most important story. The one thing I would say coming back from the kingdom is I think they're going to cautiously watch the reopening. They're not prepared to say yet, totally out of the woods. So one thing I heard was a lot of emphasis on what happens with Chinese New Year. Do you have a strong rise in COVID cases? Does it overwhelm the healthcare system? Do you see a potential return of lockdown restrictions? Also, if you have this big reopening, it puts pressure on energy prices, supply chain issues. Does the Fed become more aggressive with rate hikes? So again, I think Saudi Arabia is going to be very cautious. They're not prepared to say we're out of the woods. And they're really waiting to basically say, if we have to come back into this market, we believe in the preemption doctrine. If OPEC needs to come in and stabilize the markets, we will do so. We're not going to wait till June if there is another downturn.
What is the relationship in your mind today with the United States?
I think it is better than October. I mean, Hadley, I was at that OPEC meeting in October, the sort of meltdown in Washington after that OPEC decision, which I think now has been very much vindicated in terms of that production cut. I think the relationship is on much stronger footing. I was at the Future Minerals Conference. There were U.S. officials there. Remember at the FII, there were no U.S. government officials at that conference. There were U.S. officials there this week in Riyadh. I think they understand Washington, the importance of, key strategic issues with Saudi they have to partner with on. Iran is a principal issue. I think that ties the United States now to their Gulf partners. I mean, Iran has made significant progress on the nuclear program.
Absolutely.
We have this ongoing crackdown on dissidents there, on peaceful demonstrators in Iran. And so I think that is something that Riyadh and Washington are going to work more closely together on.
Dan?
Hey, Helima, Dan here. With regards to the United States, what cards do you think Washington has left to play if we saw energy prices spike off the back of a war escalation this year, or maybe even the ongoing and full Chinese reopening, which could spike energy demand?
I mean, Dan, that is the number one question. If you see a significant run up in prices, if we get to, $100 plus, oil prices, Washington has already done, a major, like the largest drawdown of the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve ever to combat rising oil prices. Now, the White House will say we could still do more, but nobody expects right now another blockbuster SPR release. In fact, the question is, when will the U.S. start refilling the SPR? So that card seems to be sort of off the table. At least it's not going to be the bazooka that they used last year. So the question is, what do you have next? And I think, again, if you have a run up in oil prices, there's going to be that sort of telephone diplomacy to the key OPEC members to try to get them to put more barrels on the market. Now, the U.S. has asked the U.S. producers to continue to sort of try to produce more. U.S. producers are saying we're doing what we can, but we still want, more help on permitting. We basically have to answer to our shareholders. So again, the U.S. is not seen as the major factor in terms of capping oil prices in terms of U.S. production. Again, the call has to go to Riyadh. It has to go to Abu Dhabi.